So I don't want to say there's nothing the Utah Jazz can do to fix their team. For one, that's a really boring video. And for two, the NBA always surprises us. I mean, I was legit shocked when Chris Paul was traded for Russell Westbrook, or when Trae Young made the Eastern Conference Finals. So yes, anything is possible. But when you've got a Defensive Player of the Year who can't play in certain playoff series and isn't great on offense but makes $205 million, it's gonna take a miracle to fix that. However, this offseason is not just about Rudy Gobert. This video explains every major decision for the Jazz. This team played great in the regular season, the #1 seed, but couldn't put the Clippers away without Kawhi Leonard. They've got a new majority owner and Dwayne Wade is in the mix. The front office has already been shaken up, so they mean business. It'll be tough, but big moves will happen. Yo, it's Casey. This is AM Hoops. I don't even know how many teams we've gotten done in the offseason, but every Wednesday we drop a new offseason thing. And by the way, free agency starts August 2nd, so I mean, I've got to get a lot of these done quickly. Maybe it just won't be on Wednesdays, I'm not sure. Or maybe we'll just continue them after free agency, and we'll talk about that as part of the storyline. But today is the Jazz, and their cap space is $0. Exceptions, the $5.9 million taxpayer mid-level, and they got a couple of small trade exceptions. Draft, 30th overall, last pick in the first round. Needs front court depth and potentially point guard, because they're relevant free agents, Mike Conley Jr. And we will get to Gobert, but first, bringing back Mike Conley should be priority #1. Seems like a no-brainer, right? But he was their best player on a lot of nights last season, and he is an unrestricted free agent. That means teams with cap space can pay him a ton and maybe price out Utah. All right, they could also pay him, but it'll mean a huge luxury tax bill for their new ownership group. And this is actually how we're gonna know if the owners really wanna win. Are they gonna pay like $20 million to Mike Conley, which will end up being like $60 million with the luxury tax? That is insane. But Conley was amazing for the entire roster last season. It kind of reminds me of Chris Paul in Phoenix. I mean, Devin Booker was always great, but we always said he needs a great pure point guard next to him. Donovan Mitchell, same thing. Like CP3, Conley runs the team much better than Spider Mitchell can. And Conley is great at getting Gobert involved, which is huge, especially for his confidence. He runs the offense and he's good defensively, despite his age. And that's one of his problems, age and injury. I think the Jazz actually would have beat the banged up Clippers if Conley was healthy. And the dirty little secret, Utah has to bring him back or else they can't replace him. The team's already over the salary cap, but the salary cap rules will let you bring back your own players even if you don't have any money. But if you let your own player go and you don't have any money, you can't replace him. Now, I think the only teams that could poach Conley from Utah are the Miami Heat or the Dallas Mavericks. Many more teams than that have cap space, but you gotta think that Conley at this stage in his life and career wants to win and get paid. A sign and trade could theoretically get Conley to any team though. The next question is what to do with Rudy Gobert. The guy once again showed that he's great in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he can't deal with talented teams that go small. This happens like every year. Now, I did think that paying him was the right decision because they can't find anyone else to replace him, but now they are stuck with him. And I would love to hear what Jazz fans think about this. Please tell me in the comments. But I think their main problem overall was the defense around Gobert. Because yes, Rudy sucks on the perimeter, and the Clippers took advantage of that, but he can't be in two places at once. They ask him to do so much on defense, and the whole team gets exposed. The Jazz cannot trade Gobert, but what they can do is put defensive wings around him that will force opposing players into the paint where Gobert can actually be dangerous. Now, we will get to how they get those defensive wings, but the first thing they have to work with is the draft. And at 30th overall, they select Herbert Jones, a small forward. There are a lot of options, by the way, if you go look around at mock drafts here and look around at guys late in the draft with this skill set. But for this pick, I picked Herbert because he's got the highest defensive upside this late in the draft. And this dude has a ceiling to guard 1 through 5 in the NBA. He is 6'8" and was a master at guarding without fouling, which takes a lot of skill and a lot of discipline. Getting Jones is the first building building block really to that perimeter defense I talked about that would unlock Rudy Gobert. But the next move is free agent targets. And free agency starts August 2nd, like I said. Their first dream pickup would be Nicolas Batum. The Clippers got him basically for nothing last year because everyone thought he was done, but instead he rebounded and was so versatile. Batum is a forward, but he can handle the ball and run the offense in a pinch. He played small ball center in the playoffs. He provides veteran leadership, and he's a plus defensively. And that checks so many boxes for Utah. But honestly, if he's taking anybody's mid-level exception, it's going to be to stay with the Clippers. And that's even a question mark because he was so good. I think a team like Dallas should consider using cap space on him. I mean, the Jazz should have gotten him before the Clippers got him, like last year when he looked washed. But really, 29 other teams are saying that right now, so I'm not going to knock him. Their next target is Otto Porter Jr., one of the most overpaid guys in the league last year. But now he'll be a free agent and his price tag will come way down. Now, he's not making an all-defensive team. I'm not saying that, but his perimeter defense is at least passable. He's got the quickness laterally to stay in front of guys, and he's a good scorer at all three levels, so he's more of a two-way player. Now, my only concern is demand for this guy because he's 28 years old, so he's still in his prime, and other teams might want to take a chance that he'll regain the form he had 2 years ago and give him more than the mid-level. Still, though, I would rank Batum as choice number 1 because of his defense and his versatility. Then Porter as target number 2. Other potential free agent targets they should consider are guys like PJ Tucker, Derek Jones Jr., or older guy options like Danny Green or Andre Iguodala or Trevor Ariza, even though those guys have clearly lost a step. Some of those guys might take more money, by the way, because they could return to their team on 1 year for a higher 1-year salary, but if the Jazz wanted to give them multiple years, then they could snag them. But the last piece to this puzzle is a trade. And one trade I would love to see is the Jazz dealing Jordan Clarkson for Robert Covington and a 2023 lottery protected first. Now, the Blazers don't love doing this because they already traded 2 firsts to get Rocco from Houston, but that's how good Jordan Clarkson is on offense. Portland, by the way, might need to shake things up this offseason, and if, say, they dealt CJ McCollum for help in the front court, this could be a cheap way and effective way to replace CJ. Now, on the Jazz, let's face it, Clarkson's a luxury. I mean, they were like the #1 seed with a great offense. They don't need more offense. Plus, Joe Ingles also could have been the 6th man of the year. That's how good he was leading that bench unit at times. And what they actually need is wing defense, even if they have to overpay for one. Robert Covington did not play his best basketball last year in Portland, but I think on a team as good as Utah, he could rebound. So the big picture for the Jazz is the Mike Conley move is their real only major decision. There's nothing to be done with Rudy Gobert on his contract, so they need to instead surround him with wing defenders to not get beat at small ball again in the postseason. I do think this team is good enough to break through to the finals, but they do need a great offseason to get there.